because we've got a very full program ahead. No? Yes? No? No. Okay. So guys, you need to get people into the auditorium. Start calling them in now.
Ehi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sto parlando al microfono per lo streaming. Prova 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sì, eh? Lo devi alzare tantissimo? Ma sì, sto abbastanza basso, cioè di solito uno parla così, provano 2, 3, non mi regolo con fuori. Però mi sembra strano che c'hai la musichetta alta e il coso basso, perché tu passi per un bass che è direttamente proporzionale per quello che sto mandando fuori. Ma com'è possibile? Aspetta, così? Meglio? E allora io quando parlo sto così, dai. Te porta a 0. Poi dipende come parla la persona, però quello te lo posso alzare. Ehi, prova 2, 3. Questa è una prova per lo streaming. This is the test for the streaming. Streaming test. Streaming test. Streaming test. Streaming test. Provano 2, 3, 4, 5. Provano uno streaming. streaming test, streaming test, streaming test. Questo è uno streaming test. Provano 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. This is a test for the streaming, test for the streaming. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sì. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the test for the streaming. We are in Rome. We are in Rome. Yes, 1, 2. Yes, there is a delay. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the test for the streaming. Test 1, test 2, test 3. This is the test 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
It's not very loud.
No, it is,
You hear the buzzing?
yeah, buzzing, noise. Ragazzi, in streaming c'hanno una ronza megagalattica. Cioè, ce l'hai pure te, ma io l'ho sentita, non era così alta. Perché non ha scaricato. C'è un lift là. Mettilo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sì. C'è sta un pad, no. E poi c'è sta anche un...
It's better.
Yeah.
The buzzing is
Yeah.
not as loud.
We make a ground lift on the DI the noise.
It's good now.
This is usually the current that makes this noise. I can't do
Yeah, of
anything.
course.
No, però tipo con lift, adesso abbiamo fatto la prova, è zero, è proprio zero, cioè sembra zero almeno dal telefono. Prova 1, 2, 3. Se lo senti dal telefono siamo passati da Ehi. Provano 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ehi. Diciamo che a questo punto sono quel ciclo di macchine là che chiamano la corrente che passa sulla terra e si concatina con tutte le mani. Sono mal schermati. Prova un po' a staccare gli alimentatori dei due PC. Stanno in batteria, no? Devi staccarli tutti però, Sì, stanno cercando Prova quell'altro, quello dello streaming. Niente? Prova 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, allora hai spinto il pad. No, il pad te va via perché scende proprio il livello, Daniele. scende il livello e a te ti sembra di meno, capito? Tutto lì. Invece sta proprio un tastino che si chiama lift. Sì, 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 sì. No, no, aspetta. Prova adesso? Uguale? Uguale. Ah, sento dallo streaming, lo sento. Aumenta, poi vi dico tu, addirittura aumenta per fare vedere che sta web. È proprio corrente. Che sì, però tipo. No, devi spengere la. Devi spengere la Phantom.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5. Ronza è rimasta. Sì, 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 sì. Sì, 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 sì. Ehi. Penso che praticamente per quanto sia si può pure caricare lei. Ogni tanto praticamente toccherebbe staccarla e riattaccarla. Nelle pause. No, e se non la usi è peggio, sì. Ehi. Sì. Teoricamente dovresti staccare i cavi e riattaccarli, però bisogna farlo nei momenti di pausa, cioè tipo che se no c'è sta un coffee break, alla fine a quel punto lì o stacchi o riattacchi. Però dimmi se. Però tipo adesso ce l'hai pulita? Però è bassa. Ok. Si monta. Ci vuole ben altro per levare questo. Che ci vuole? L'APC. Sì, quello che fa pure da filtro, però l'APC fanno pure da filtro. Ah, con l'HPF. Sì, c'hanno tutti i filtrini. Quella da molto, quello che so io. È un distributore di corrente, di corrente c'è per due uscite. Di corrente, però tutte filtrate.
Ehi, ehi, ehi. Se accendi? Ehi, sì, prova una 2, 3, 4. Non è che non ce l'hai, è che non la senti, perché è coperta dal mio... È il cosiddetto rapporto segnale-rumore, capito? Il segnale è così alto che praticamente il rumore non lo senti. A vuoto. È una cosa assurda. Dico, è una cosa assurda, però se fallo, guarda, di solito è gate. Così per esempio devi scendere. Ehi, vedi? Alzo la voce, sta un po' più vicino a me e eccolo qua. Chiude, no? Cioè. Peggio di prima. E dai, questo è qua che gli dà fastidio, sta alimentatore, il computer sopra la TI. Cioè, se io faccio così. Così, sono tutti i campi magnetici. Sì. Okay.
1, 2. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to you. Can I ask those of you who are making your way in, if you can, please. We've had issues with long lines at registration. Can I ask all those of you in the room to please take your seats? Can we close the doors? Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask for your silence, please? It's the beginning of the day. I'll have no voice left if I have to start shouting. And I'm going to introduce myself in a moment, But can I ask all of you to please take your seats? Can I please ask for your attention? Please, the people who are still talking to one another, could you please do us and everybody the courtesy of taking your seats? Because we'll be hours behind if we aren't able to start now. We've got a very busy program together. Can I ask those at the door, could you close the doors and then people can open them as they come in? Because otherwise, if we have the doors open all the time, there's just going to be an awful lot of noise, and we're going to have a really good performance for you now. So we don't want disturbances and noises. Would you mind standing, the gentleman at the back, would you mind closing that door? And also those doors, please. Great. And that way then we'll get some silence in the room. Thank you very much for that. So a very good morning to you all. On behalf of Interreg Med, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you to this year's Made in Med event, Crafting the Future Mediterranean. My name is Karen Coleman. I'm a journalist and a broadcaster from Ireland, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator of this event over the next 2 days. You're going to hear a lot from me over the next 2 days. So, before we get proceedings underway formally, we have now for you a very dynamic short performance. So this particular performance reflects the Mediterranean social and creative communities, which is one of the 8 communities that is part of the Interreg Med program. It's a performance that joins 2 projects together. It's called Red Thread, and it's a collaboration involving 3 artists. It had its genesis in Palermo, and it's about a new appreciation for what we're wearing. So I'd like to invite now on stage the 3 performers. Repair-a-thon is going to be performed by Sasha Nemec. Red Dress is going to be performed by Claudia di Gangi, and the music will be performed by Giuseppe Lomeo. Very good. Thank you very much for that. Very dramatic, fabulous performance. Red Thread performed by Sasha Nemec, Claudia di Gangi, and Giuseppe Lomeo. Thank you so much for that. If we can have the stage crew on stage now to set up the stage for the next part, because I'm told we all have to be off the stage because they're going to change the screens. So do we have our stage crew ready for action to bring in the seats to take off what's on stage at the moment? Where's the stage crew? Did they decide not to come into work today? We could have problems. We might be calling on some of you to arrange for seats to be put on stage. Any idea where the stage crew are? Will you? Okay, great. You weren't told that furniture removal was part of the performance, were you? Okay, good. So, do you want us off on stage while we're setting up? Okay. I'm told we have to leave the stage while this is going on. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm just going to give you a little bit more information, unless it's okay. Can I stay here and talk to people here? Okay, I'm going to take a chance. So for those of you who have just come in, you're very welcome, and I know registration has taken a little bit longer than expected. It's often the case. We have around 800 people registered actually for this event, so that explains why I think there may have been queues at the registration, but please take your seats because we have a very enjoyable two-day program for you. Let me reintroduce myself. My name is Karen Coleman. I'm a journalist and broadcaster from Ireland, and I'll be your moderator over the next 2 days. Before I introduce our opening speeches and speakers, let me just give you a little bit, a few housekeeping details. First of all, translation of the events here in the plenary will be available in English on Channel 1 and French on Channel 2. You should have got your headsets outside the auditorium here. If you want to get on the network, then the Wi-Fi codes, the network is Made in Med, and the password is Made 2018. So that's Made 2018 with a small m. Some background to today's event. The Interreg Med program is a European transnational cooperation program. It's co-financed by the European Regional Development Fund, and the program provides funds for cooperation projects developed and managed by public bodies and in some cases private entities in the northern regions of the Mediterranean. Now, the overall objective of the program is to promote sustainable growth in the Med area. It does so by fostering innovative concepts and practices and a smart use of resources. And just to remind you of the program's achievements so far, there are 8 communities of projects, 1,000 partners, 91 projects, and 176 million euro invested so far. And the aim of this conference, the Made in Med conference over the next 2 days, is to demonstrate the state of play of the Interreg program at midterm. So we're going to hear about the progress of some projects so far, and there will be opportunities to hear about innovative ideas, share and exchange knowledge and experiences, and explore further cooperation in the Mediterranean. Let me tell you a little bit as well about the exhibition area, which is, I think it's this way where you will also be eating. There's an exhibition guide that you can download by using the QR code, which will be displayed on each panel of the exhibition. You can also see some videos of projects, and the video room is out through the auditorium and up the steps. I think there will be some direction to where you can go and see the videos. You can also explore the Interreg Med projects brochure. Again, this can be downloaded by scanning the QR codes found on the panels of the exhibition. There is also an open week that's going to be going on until the end of May. A few partners have opened their doors to the public in order to explain and share their work. So for today, we're going to be focusing on 3 themes during the panel debates and discussions and presentations. They're going to be climate change, the blue economy, and inclusive growth. And then tomorrow, we're going to get more political perspectives. If you want to use Twitter, you're more than welcome to do so. The Interreg Med program is on Twitter. Its address is @medprogram, and you can follow the hashtag for this conference, which is Made in Med. So that's hashtag Made in Med. You will see already Jörg is busy drawing some drawings of what's going on. He's from Dronalists, and he's going to capture the essence of the program over the next 2 days. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers who will formally open the event, and I'd like to invite on stage now Beatrice Covassi, the head of the representation of the European Commission in Italy, Maria Ludovica Agro, who is the Director General of the Agency for Territorial Cohesion in Italy, and Tarja Richard, the head of the Managing Authority at the Région Sud Provence-Alpes Côte d'Azur. You're all very welcome, ladies, if you can take your seats. And if I can call on you, Beatrice Covassi, to make the opening speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Benvenuti a Roma. Buona mattina. I would like first and foremost to thank the Presidency of the Council of Ministers of Italy, the Italian Agency for the Territorial Cohesion, and the region of Sud Provence-Alpes Côte d'Azur for organizing this very important conference. As you're all aware, this meeting comes at a very crucial time when we discuss the future of EU in general, but also notably the future of the multi-annual financial framework, so the budget. How do we spend our money? How do we allocate our money? Which means, you know, what are the policy priorities that we are looking at? This debate is highly political, therefore, and focuses on many of the current challenges outside and inside Europe. But just to mention the migration, the refugee crisis, climate change, security, defense policy, and the persistence, of course, of youth unemployment and the challenges of social cohesion. I would like also to mention that the timing is very tight, and the European Commission always stresses the wish that we find an agreement after the 2nd of May, when we will publish our proposals, to find an agreement very quickly on the future perspectives in order to be able to implement swiftly the new policies that we want to bring about for European citizens. But of course, as you're all aware, this is extremely difficult and is going to be tight before 2019 next Commission and next European Parliament elections. This is to put the context, so to put you in the framework of what is the wider debate in Europe today and why your meeting today here is so important and is so crucial to show and showcase what are the concrete results and what are the concrete outcomes of an important part of cohesion policy. European territorial cooperation, in my opinion, is really something which illustrates at its best what is the essence of our European project. It does not simply involve, regions, and we know that they have to be at least from 2 member states, but it involves people. It involves, workers. It involves concrete operators and very specific environments that are challenged to improve people's life, everyday life. So it has a very, very down-to-earth, everyday life kind of feel and touch. And in many position papers that the Commission received in connection with the preparation of its post-2020 perspectives, Interreg was always perceived as one of the best ways to help regions find hands-on solutions and become more resilient. Interreg-funded projects allow European citizens to share experience, knowledge, but first and foremost, I would say, to build trust and to implement common solutions that can address shared concerns. It has also facilitated cooperation with EU candidate countries or neighborhood countries. And in the light of the enlargement package that we adopted yesterday, I would really like to underscore this aspect as a crucial one, as it is, in a way, you know, an experiment of this sharing trust beyond EU borders, with 19 EU members, 8 non-EU countries, and over 340 million people. So it is definitely a huge added value. Let me focus on this added value and bring about 3 reflections on the future before I conclude these introducing remarks. At these times, as I said, when we are discussing the future of EU budget and we have so many competing and challenging policy issues facing us, it is really important that we can show and prove EU added value in everything that we do and propose. This is important for our citizens, but it's important also for our own action and for the resilience of our own institutions. For Interreg, the main question now is how can we be more impactful? So this EU added value goes in the direction of assessing how can we make cohesion policy and Interreg in particular more impactful. So I will briefly, recall 3 key objectives. Well, first, we would like to revisit the architecture of Interreg programs. At the moment, the EU budget finances hundreds of territorial cooperation programs. And of course, the more you are fragmented, the more you multiply projects, the more there is a risk that you have overlaps and inefficiencies in some areas. So this is the first line of reflection to see how we can reduce fragmentation without losing the local dimension of cooperation. Second, we need to further improve the strategic dimension of Interreg programs. So they have to be more strategic, meaning that we would like to look at thematic concentration and performance framework. And and I would say more and foremost, we need to simplify. I mean, whenever I talk to, at any level, to regional, local actors, also in this country, the main concern and the main criticism is very often, please do simplify the programs. There's too much bureaucracy, it is very difficult to access, it doesn't reach the citizen, it doesn't reach the mainstream, the people in the street, let's say, because this is so heavy as a process, and it's heavy also to explain. So we see as a top priority the simplification of the management and of the control systems, as this can be also a way to restore more trust between the different level of the authorities involved. And also because, as I said, simplification means that we have to streamline the several projects of relatively small size involving partners from different countries with different rules, currencies, etc., in order to have a framework that works much more smoothly. So I come to a conclusion of this introductory remarks by saying that really cohesion policy is the face and the concrete example of Europe that works, that is useful, that is on the territories. And for this reason, we need to pay attention within it to Interreg in particular, as the most pan-European expression of this cohesion policy. And I would like to add we need to pay attention also politically to the Mediterranean dimension. Because let's not forget that we very often speak nowadays about the French-German axis. This is a very well-known driver of European integration, but talking from a Mediterranean country, where I represent here, I have the honor to represent the European Commission, it is very important that we increase and we find more synergies among Mediterranean countries, because the Mediterranean as such is a very focal point of interest and is a very key actor in the future of the European Union. Thank you very much, and I wish you a fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much for that. And now I'd like to invite Maria Ludovica Agro to the podium, Director General of the Agency for Territorial Cohesion in Italy.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Je voudrais remercier d'abord Beatrice et Covassi pour représenter d'une manière remarquable la voix importante de la Commission européenne et pour confirmer l'engagement constant de la représentation dans les activités de communication et l'importance positive que l'Union européenne et les politiques mises en œuvre jouent dans la vie quotidienne des citoyens du pays de l'Union européenne. En ce sens, la conférence d'aujourd'hui est absolument représentative des résultats de la politique de cohésion et en particulier de programmes de coopération qui, à travers la création de partenariats entre pays et institutions hautement qualifiées, contribuent à renforcer les sentiments d'appartenance à l'Union européenne, même en préservant les spécificités de chaque territoire et rassembler les meilleures compétences et expériences pour atteindre les résultats partagés. L'Italie est fière d'accueillir la conférence de demi-parcours du programme Interreg-Med qui coïncide avec la présidence italienne du même programme. Et cet événement se pose à mi-parcours de la période de programmation 14-20 et dans l'année où le cadre financier pluriannuel sera discuté, négocié et défini, représentera enfin le scénario de la mise en œuvre des politiques de cohésion pour la période après le 2020. Sur ces deux thèmes, le département pour les politiques de cohésion et l'agence pour la cohésion territoriale, qui a la compétence de l'implémentation de la politique de cohésion, sont fortement engagés à garantir, dans le cadre de la position italienne, la continuation de ces politiques stratégiques et en soulignant l'importance de la coopération territoriale européenne, soutenir la nécessité de promouvoir projets de qualité et soutenir aussi toute initiative susceptible de contribuer à qualifier le débat après le 2020. Le programme MED peut revendiquer dans cette période de programmation, comme dans la précédente, de résultats significatifs qui sont représentés dans l'exposition mise en place à côté et j'invite tout le monde à le visiter. En particulier, les 90 projets approuvés à ce jour et en cours de mise en œuvre ont démontré le succès de l'échafaudage des piliers sur lesquels le programme se base. Alors que d'une part, le projet modulaire et le projet intégré représentent d'une manière capillaire la façon de poursuivre les objectifs liés aux trois axes thématiques du programme, d'autre part, le projet horizontaux représentant l'effort de systématiser, de capitaliser le résultat dans les thèmes tels que le changement climatique, l'économie bleue et la croissance inclusive. Aujourd'hui, nous aurons l'occasion de partager les premiers résultats obtenus qui, j'en suis sûre, nous conduiront à une prise de conscience commune du succès de l'approche adoptée par les programmes et fortement soutenue par les pays membres au sein du comité du suivi. Je crois que dans les domaines thématiques dont nous discuterons aujourd'hui et sur lesquels le partenariat italien sont présents d'une manière significative, l'engagement des pays doit être renforcé et l'action de politique liée à la recherche, à l'innovation, doit être orientée de plus en plus fortement dans le cadre des politiques de cohésion et des programmes de coopération. L'agence a également fortement soutenu la définition de l'approbation du projet Panoramed. En tant qu'outil d'implémentation de l'axe 4 spécifiquement dédié à la gouvernance, qui contribue à relever le défi que le projet lui-même représente. C'est un projet ambitieux qui nous fait prendre conscience qu'il s'agit d'une opportunité unique de partager avec les autorités nationales et régionales des 12 pays membres du programme des objectifs à moyen et long terme dans les secteurs du tourisme côtier et maritime et la surveillance maritime pour promouvoir une planification stratégique et qualifiée, mais aussi pour améliorer le renforcement des capacités des acteurs et des parties prenantes impliquées. C'est un pari sur lequel le programme doit beaucoup se concentrer et investir encore plus, car il peut vraiment devenir le moyen pour lequel nous pouvons avoir une vision unifiée des politiques méditerranéennes. Promouvoir des outils efficaces et innovants pour soutenir la dynamique du développement et confirmer les programmes de coopération pour la période de programmation après 2020. À cet égard, je rappelle que l'Italie a transmis l'année dernière sa position à la Commission européenne sur l'après-2020 et les documents soulignent l'importance de confirmer les programmes de coopération et un axe spécifique et dédié à la Méditerranée, dont l'importance stratégique est soulignée. Enfin, je pense que l'un des points forts du programme est la participation de 3 pays IPA, Bosnie, Albanie et Monténégro, parce que c'est une façon concrète de l'Union européenne pour accompagner et soutenir le parcours de l'adhésion à l'Union. L'Italie estime que cette responsabilité est forte, comme en témoigne la participation à des programmes de coopération avec ces pays, à savoir le programme Italie, Albanie, Monténégro, et la nécessité de renforcer les liens avec les pays de la rive sud de la Méditerranée. Je suis sûre de partager cette approche avec tous les pays, institutions, organisations qui sont représentées aujourd'hui. Je pense que le nombre de participants aujourd'hui est une confirmation de l'intérêt pour les questions dont nous discuterons dans ces 2 jours au cours desquels je suis sûre que vous donnerez beaucoup d'espace et une juste relève aux résultats importants et significatifs déjà obtenus. Pour cette raison, je voudrais vraiment féliciter l'autorité de gestion du programme, Madame Richard, à qui je tiens à confirmer le soutien total de l'Italie et je souhaite à tout un bon travail.
Thank you very much. And our final opening speaker is Tarja Richard, the head of the managing authority at the Région Sud-Provence-Alpes Côte d'Azur. And if I can ask as well the crew or the organisers to put water on the tables and interpretation sets as well, please. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this MED conference, which will be the biggest event of our program during this programming period. First of all, I would like to also, from my part, to thank the organizers, the Italian Agency for Territorial Cohesion in particular, for offering us this good frame for the conference and helping very much to organize things. And also I would like to thank you, the projects who are here, for your contribution to this organization. Now I have good news for you because I'm here to talk about the program architecture, why things have been put together like this. And so the good news are that we already revisited the architecture. We are already, as you know, very much in the complementarity of financing, maximizing the results via structured capitalization, the link between individual project activities and synergies and policy-making level. So all this was put together in the beginning of this period, 2014-20. If I take you a little bit back to the previous period, I would just like to remind you that we now have 10 years of, let's say, operational progress in the MED program. We opened the first call for the MED 2007-13 almost exactly 10 years ago. And during the first edition of MED, if I can say so. We were thinking about, we were testing with you. Some of you were probably already present. We were thinking about new types of projects, what is the maximizing of impact, introducing the notion of capitalization, which at that period was new. What is it really about? How to structure things so that projects would not live and die in isolation. This was the key question for the new period. And as you know, I think everybody by now must know that we invented a new concept of horizontal projects in order to create these thematic communities that we are talking about today, and we are precisely talking about their results today. So we are starting to see them emerging, and I think we all can conveniently agree on the importance that this introduction of horizontal projects has been given to this type of cooperation program. I would also remind from the structural capitalization side that we put together the web platform, which is compiling all the individual websites of the projects, each one of them, and the thematic communities around which they are organized, and the horizontal projects as such. And this is also a way to gain more visibility, to clarify the message, and it's all going to the same way. Then also one of the principles of this new organization of a cooperation program is that we are not alone. We are just a cooperation program. So obviously we are in the middle of everybody else. There are other cooperation programs. There are other European Union funding sources and programs. There are policy networks. There are Mediterranean level networks. There are other DGs in the Commission handling financing, action plan for the Mediterranean of United Nations, so on. And we need to find, for the little money that we are distributing, the most synergy and complementarity possible with all these other existing frameworks and operations. And this is one of the key issues also of the current period of programming. And this is one of the reasons why we have put together a governance axis and a specific governance platform project, Panoramed, as you know it today, because there is a direct participation of these policy frameworks and networks as associated partners, and the driving force of this specific type of governance project are our member states themselves. So it's a direct participation of ministries, but also of regions. So the program has been put together in a way that systematizes synergies and capitalization. First of all, there are synergies and capitalization between projects with this architecture, with this construction. Then there is synergy between levels of action, because we try to put together the concrete pilot actions from the project level with the policy-making level. And finally, synergies are also between stakeholders, because it's between, again, our projects and the policy frameworks and other programs and other funding sources. So somehow these 2 days, the first day talking about the contents, showcasing the contents, knowing that now we have spent 85% of the financing allocated for this period. We have programmed it at least. It's in the ongoing projects. It's under your decisions now. And somehow these 2 days, the showcasing the first day of the results of all these projects, and then tomorrow transferring the debate to the policy-making level, this is a reflection of the program as such. The conference is reliably reflecting what the program is and how it has been built up. But still, I think after these first results, we have work to do. The Mediterranean is indeed an important area for the European Union, and it should be even more important. The Mediterranean should have a voice. It should not be cut in little pieces. And this is in the interest of Mediterranean countries, Mediterranean structures, those who want to do cooperation, and for the next edition of cohesion policy and for the cooperation programs that now seemingly are continuing, we need to defend this position. Because this is why we are all here today, and we collectively, it's thanks to you that all this message can pass and all this visibility can be gained through this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much to Beatrice, Covassi, Maria, Ludovica, Agro, and to Tarja, Richard. Thank you very much. You can leave the stage. Thank you. Okay, so again, a reminder to our house crews, can we fill more water on the tables and interpretation sets as well? Have them ready for our question and answer sessions. So now, during our next segment, we're going to get some expert views on common challenges the Mediterranean area faces. We're also going to see what opportunities can be explored. So I'd now like to invite our two speakers participating in this segment to join me on stage. George Kremlis, Honorary Director with the European Commission's DG Environment, in charge of the circular economy in the islands and of transboundary environmental assessments, and Professor Abdelhanid El-Zoheiry, President of the Euro-Mediterranean University of Slovenia. You're both very welcome. And I think, George Kremlis, perhaps you can make the first address. Thank you. Are you giving a speech or is it a presentation? You have a PowerPoint. So if we can get Mr. Kremlis's look, we have you here, so hopefully it's there. I think they're going to do this remotely, but there you have your slide mover as well.
Good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure and a privilege to take the floor in front of such an important audience representing the key players and stakeholders of the Mediterranean, the cradle of the civilization, and I would say the most important sea of the European Union. I would like, before taking you through my presentation, which is a little bit longer than the time I have, but in any case, it will be uploaded on the website of the conference, and you will have the time to read it carefully. I would like to share with you some general considerations following also what the head of the representation of the European Commission in Italy has mentioned. This is a period during which a lot of things, a lot of developments are taking place within the European Union. We are currently preparing the next programming period 2020-2027, where of course the cohesion policy and the territorial cohesion that has been introduced next to the economic and the social cohesion by the Lisbon Treaty have to be fully reflected, and of course Interreg will have to be fully supported. And in that respect, in the public consultations that will take place for the preparation of the next programming period, your voices will also be very important to support the territorial cohesion and Interreg. And I would also say insularity and the coastal areas and regions which are facing specific problems. And why not consider, and in this respect I speak on a personal capacity, next to the Adriatic and Ionian Sea macro-regional strategy, a strategy covering, a macro-regional strategy covering entirely the Mediterranean Sea, which is an option, of course, to be considered. Let me also, before taking you through my presentation, try to assemble the puzzle by saying that the key policy considerations are green growth, blue growth, circular economy, inclusive economy, and of course climate as such. Green growth is a growth, and we need growth, jobs and growth in the European Union that protects the environment, has, let's say, a friendly environmental and climate footprint. It is combined with blue growth, namely to exploit the resources of the seas, policy and the growth that also needs to have a friendly environmental and climate footprint. And also, the climate protection is there as through the environmental chapter of the treaty and the environmental integration principle, climate is also mainstreamed through all the other policies of the European Union, and in that respect, it has to be protected together with the environment. And as you all know, the European Union is a front runner for the protection of climate, and we have also been front runners as regards the Sustainable Development Goals, which put a lot of emphasis not only on the environment, but also on climate protection. Last but not least, circular economy. We will all be dancing with the rhythms of the circular economy in the future, as circular economy is becoming a key priority for the European Union, and circular economy is linking green growth with blue growth. It's extremely important. It will lead to green and blue jobs, eco-innovation, new initiatives, and in that respect, it will also contribute to the protection of the climate and will enable also the European economy to take all the profits from the wastes that we are currently disposing as waste, while they should be considered as products. Let me take you very quickly through my long presentation. I wanted to emphasize to the policy priorities as I have stated. This is green economy. I have already explained what it is about, and of course this is the UNEP definition, which is a worldwide one. Then green growth is extremely important, and what we need is to ensure the footprint, the friendly footprint of green growth and climate footprint. The global material use is increasing, and this is an overhead linked to circular economy, as if we continue with the current production and consumption patterns, we will soon need 2 planets, and of course this is something we cannot even consider. Therefore, as you can see, we need to reduce the use of the resources and reuse and recover resources through the circular economy process. As you see, the patterns in several parts of the world are currently unsustainable. You can see that over this line, the parallel line on the bottom, what is happening is unsustainable and has a very high footprint. Here are the Sustainable Development Goals to which I have referred. They are very important. They cover not only the issues that will be discussed here in this 2 days conference, but other issues as well. Life before water, for example, climate action, halving the food waste by 50% by 2030, which is extremely important. Food waste can be exploited as a resource. This is the virtual circle of circular economy. We need now to ensure the transition towards the circular economy by reducing the waste, by maintaining the value, prolonging the life of the products, producing products that will be repairable and will be easily reused and recycled. And in that respect, the waste package that was yesterday discussed in the European Parliament, where President Macron made also a very important presentation on the future of Europe, and where inter alia he has emphasized the importance of the cohesion policy as a tool, as a policy to ensure cohesion among the various regions of the European Union. In the European Parliament yesterday, the waste package was discussed. We hope that it will be adopted soon. It will be a package that will lead to the creation of new jobs, that will boost eco-innovation, that will save a lot of billions, and of course will reduce the CO2 emissions that are currently generated because of non-appropriate waste management across the European Union. This is the timeline that has been followed up to now, and we hope that after the vote yesterday and today in the European Parliament, the Council will be able to adopt this waste package, a very important one, that will initiate the circular economy concepts as regards waste management with high targets for recycling, up to 65 or even 75% as regards packaging waste, reduction of landfilling to 10%. These are extremely important new priorities which try to boost the pyramid of waste management, to prevent waste, to reuse, to recycle, to recover materials, etc. I will not spend more time on this. Implementation of the current legislation and promotion is extremely important. We have initiated the environmental implementation review, that is a reporting system concerning the environmental performances of the EU 28, unfortunately 27 soon, and which is reporting on the state of the environment, on the compliance deficiencies, and on what needs to be done for the member states to fully comply with the EU environmental acquis, which is an extremely important one, and which of course will contribute to better environmental integration. This circular economy will lead to green jobs, as you can see. This is again the circle of the circular economy and how it appears. In that respect, the EU plastics is part of the circular economy package, and I guess you have all seen in YouTube and in the net all the videos on the plastics in the oceans. If they continue spreading that way, there will be more fish, more plastics than fish in the mid-long term. This is a trend that we need absolutely to stop. The plastic strategy is a new vision of the European Union, but of course the European Union is a pioneer. We are a very strong player in the international scene, but the others need to follow to stop this unsustainable trend of plastics. And certainly through this plastic strategy, plastics will be reused, will be recycled. There will be a new culture on the use of plastics. One use plastic bags will be banned. A lot of initiatives are taken in that respect. And as you can see here, the different types of plastics that you can find on the European beaches. Fortunately, not so many compared to other parts of the globe, but still very worrying, especially for the Mediterranean being, let's say, the most clean sea, or one of the most clean seas of the world, that we need to preserve by all means. This is now, I'm now moving very quickly to the blue economy from the green and economy, very quickly. These are the blue economy activities. As you can see, they have several impacts and several components. The blue economy can lead to the creation of new jobs, to new incomes for the countries, for the European Union. As you can see here from the different graphs, a lot of activities will be developed, from fisheries, aquaculture, shipbuilding, transport, etc., non-living resources, and of course tourism, which is extremely important for the Mediterranean. I'm not going to take you more, as time is flying, and I need to soon end my presentation. The fleet's economic performance on EU fishing is improving. This is also a recent development. And the good thing is that the emissions of boats in the ports have recently been cut. So this is also a good announcement that has occurred during the last days. The blue economy sectors are those that you can see on the screen. There are a lot of offshore oil and gas activities, especially in Eastern Mediterranean, fisheries, transport, and shipbuilding. They all have an environmental and a climate footprint. And of course, under the Maritime Spatial Planning Directive, plans have to be prepared foreseeing the various activities in these sectors that will have to undergo strategic environmental assessments to assess the carrying capacity of the environment where such developments will take place, and possibly consider mitigation and compensation measures. These are the different seas of the European Union, and the areas where the marine framework and the maritime spatial planning directives are applied. These are the EU financing sources. The former speakers have referred to them. What is important is to ensure that Interreg is not considered on its own, but within the broader context and with its synergies with the other sources of EU financing. And of course, it is very important to have this in mind when the discussions on and the public consultation on the next programming period will take place. I have already referred to the maritime spatial planning in the EU. This is extremely important because it is a planification tool that will also undergo environmental assessments and which enable the member states and the European Union to have a track of all the developments that will take place in the different seas of the European system. There is a common information sharing system on surveillance, an action plan on security, and this is all what I wanted to share with you. And probably a last remark that not only we will have public consultations on the next programming period, but we will also have soon public consultations on the future of Europe that have been initiated yesterday by President Macron in the European Parliament. I think that this forum and the Mediterranean key players have a very strong voice, and they should be actively involved in this process for a better Europe, for more Europe, and for a better Europe. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. And now our next speaker is Professor Abdelhanid El-Zoheiry, the President of the Euro-Mediterranean University of Slovenia.
Good morning. I first would like to thank the organizers for this very important and timely event, and would like to also start by mentioning that in no other time in history have the world been witnessing such magnitude of challenges. But also in no other time of history has the world been witnessing such common and shared challenges. And in my very short speech, I would like to go very quickly through these challenges. Of course, what's relevant to us. I won't talk about US politics, for instance, but I would keep it relevant to the Mediterranean, and also what opportunities we have to address such challenges. First, I would like to mention that the EU Strategy 2020, although I don't know if it's still on the table, is a very smart, inclusive, and sustainable strategy, as it mentions. It really delineates how Europe should proceed forward, and in my opinion, this strategy is also very relevant not only to Europe, but to the region. And definitely the EU Strategy 2020 mentions the smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth, and also my predecessor has mentioned very clearly what this strategy implies in terms of green and blue economy, so I will not get deeply into this. But I have to say that the EU strategy should be extended to the southern Mediterranean countries if it is going to be successful. And in my next 10 minutes, I will tell you why. In 2011, the Mediterranean countries, and here I would like to mention this as a Mediterranean revolt and not Arab Spring. First, because these were not really the Arab countries, these are the southern Mediterranean countries. And second is that this was definitely not a spring, as we see now. So during these Mediterranean revolts, the populations went out on the streets and asked for three things. They asked for aish, which you could translate it as bread, means food, means economic prosperity, or aish also in Egyptian means living. They want to live. And the second was hurriya, which is liberty and freedom. And the third was adala ijtimaiya, which means social solidarity or social equity. Let's put it this way. So these were the three demands of the people. While people were demanding social equity and freedom, when it comes to economics, actually Egyptian economy was growing at that time by almost a double-digit growth every year. So where is the problem here? Why were there people who were not, let's say, included in this growth? Simply because there is political corruption, socio-economic imbalances and instabilities, and also non-inclusive growth. Rich people are getting richer, and poor people are getting poorer. This is the problem. The problem is there is no inclusive growth. The economy of Egypt has been growing much better, not only Egypt, Tunisia, and most of the South Mediterranean has been growing at a much faster rate before 2011 than now. So it is really not that easy to just take the economic, let's say, criterion or indicators. So this is why also I wouldn't like to refer to blue economy as blue economy, but let's call it blue growth. Because when we say blue economy, we are only implying, to some people at least, maybe the non-informed, that this is only about the economy, while blue growth includes all other factors that really lead to inclusive growth. If we take the conference three cross-cutting themes, they are very relevant and they are very much interconnected, because we cannot separate climate change from the nexus of the food, water, energy. We cannot also dissociate blue from green economy. They are very much interrelated, as has been also mentioned. And of course, to reach inclusive growth, we have to capitalize on the first two pillars, which are green and blue economy. The Mediterranean and EU very much have a common and shared heritage. If we talk about several hundred years ago, there was much more free movement between both shores of the Mediterranean than we have now. What we call now, and it's quite interesting, when we have someone moving from south of the Mediterranean to north of the Mediterranean, we usually refer to them as migrants or refugees. But when we have someone moving from the north of the Mediterranean to the south of the Mediterranean, they are experts or consultants. Well, it was not always like this. It was actually the opposite several hundred years ago. But let's not get into a historical dilemma. The recent events have proven that Europe is not really so far away from the South Mediterranean. The conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan and the current and the expected conflicts in Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, Europe cannot really isolate itself from these conflicts. And I think now with the flow of refugees, and please let's use the term refugees, particularly those coming from Syria, for instance. They are not leaving their countries at leisure. And here I would like to take a minute maybe to just delineate that in this recent crisis of Syria in the last 7 years, there are close to 500,000 Syrians were killed. 5 million at least on the most, let's say, limited estimation have left the country as refugees, and more than 13 million Syrians are either internally displaced or in desperate need of humanitarian aid. So this last crisis has proven to Europe that they are not bordering really the Mediterranean or other European countries, but they are actually bordering Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan. So something has to be done about this. So let's quickly, because I have limited time, discuss what are the really dire challenges that face the southern Mediterranean. Again, they are the food, water, energy nexus. Water is, most of the southern Mediterranean countries are now under the poverty line of water. Of course, this puts a lot of strain on them for feeding their populations, which are their ever-growing populations, and providing the right energy supplies. And energy is really, this is a quiz here. With all these sun and available lands in the South Mediterranean, they still have not managed, South Mediterranean countries I mean, they still have not managed to harness renewable energy. Some of also the Southern Mediterranean countries have some of the highest wind potential in the world, apart from the sun, but still we have the energy problem. And of course we have the sea, which we can also use to desalinate the water to provide water. So water and energy are very much interrelated issues here. And I'm glad that my university, Euro-Mediterranean University, is involved in the MEDNIS project, which leads about energy efficiency, because also energy efficiency is very important in this aspect. Of course, unemployment, particularly unemployment of youth, is quite a big challenge. And what's interesting is that the higher the qualification of youth, the higher their unemployment is. It reaches more than 40% in many countries of the South Mediterranean, particularly when you're talking about highly qualified youth. I talked about the socio-economic issues and the political issues. Rule of law is absent. Social solidarity is absent. And of course, you cannot have inclusive growth when you don't have rule of law and social solidarity, plus these other economic issues. So what opportunities do we have? We really have to reinvent and rethink the cooperation between EU and the Southern Mediterranean. It should not be in the form of Euro-Mediterranean cooperation or a donor-recipient kind of relationship. It should be a true partnership based on equal footing and shared benefit and mutual interest. And this is very important. What's interesting is it is not a problem of funding, because if we take one of the current initiatives, which I'm very proud of having been involved in when I was working in Egypt, which is the PRIMA initiative, which is led by Italy, by the way. PRIMA is Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean Area. And there, the Southern Mediterranean countries are putting more funds in the PRIMA initiative than the European countries. It means that they are ready to put funds, but not to work within programs that were predetermined according to only EU needs and necessities, but rather programs that also address their needs. So PRIMA has launched. The calls are out there, research and innovation calls, and it has proven that this joint programming between the two shores of the Mediterranean is quite a successful initiative to think about in maybe other areas, because PRIMA is only involved with water and food. So I have only a few messages to say that if we want to really capitalize on these opportunities for partnership between the EU and the Mediterranean countries, we have to rethink our science diplomacy. I am very happy that the EU is putting science diplomacy now at a higher level, because simply when EU, and this was quite obvious after the 2011 events, when EU dictates democracy and rule of law on the southern Mediterranean countries, the rulers of these countries, who are mostly dictators, they use this against the cooperation. They tarnish let's say, the image of the EU as interfering within the southern Mediterranean sovereignty. But if we use the soft power of Europe, which is science diplomacy, then we are really affecting the daily life of people through science and development, and then we can pass also the agenda of rule of law, social solidarity, and others. Another very good bridge and let's say a trust-building bridge between the EU and the South Mediterranean are the diaspora of southern Mediterranean countries in Europe. Brain circulation, through using those who have left the southern Mediterranean and have settled in Europe for many years, particularly researchers, scientists, and academics, and using them to build bridges of trust between the two shores of the Mediterranean is another way. So, brain circulation. Of course, we have to work on youth employability, and the best way is to encourage entrepreneurship and support entrepreneurship. And last but not least, I would like to mention again that working through EU programs is very useful. Horizon 20 and Erasmus and Europe Aid programs, they are really good. But we have to also think outside of the box and try to determine programs and funding schemes that are suitable for the needs and capacities, very important, of the southern Mediterranean countries. I would have liked to go on and on, but I think I am very limited with time, so thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. So thank you both very much for your opening words. Lots of, I think, food for thought from both of you. Thank you very much, Professor Al-Zuhari, and to George Kremlis as well. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I said earlier, there'll be 3 thematic sessions discussed today, and our first one is going to begin now shortly. That's going to be on climate change. And during the session, we're going to hear about some of the results of some projects connected with tackling climate change in the Mediterranean region. And then we're going to have a panel debate as well with a number of participants. Now, 1 or 2 housekeeping issues before I invite our 3 project people on board on stage first. We're not going to have a coffee break at the moment here because it's got a pretty tight schedule, but there are 3 drinking fountains available in the foyer area. This is a green event, and as a result, we're trying to encourage zero plastic consumption and minimum waste. And you can also learn about how to organize sustainable events at the green corner of the exhibition as well. Now, we will be using Slido to take questions during the Q&A elements of the sessions. And just to explain Slido, for those of you who may not have used it before, if you go on to slido.com, which you can do if you have a smart device and you're on the Wi-Fi. If you go to slido.com and then you enter the code for this event, and the code is #4093. I'm not sure if it has a label on it as such, but it's #4093. You then should be able to use Slido to put your questions to the panelists or to me during the 3 sessions where we'll be taking questions from you. Because of logistical reasons and the size of the room, we won't have people with roving mics going around to you to take your questions. So this will be the most effective way for you to communicate with us on stage. There is a slight little bit of an issue, which is if loads of people go onto Slido at the same time, we may have a Wi-Fi issue, but we're hoping we won't have, and the Wi-Fi will be able to take the questions. So our team up there are going to, it's Slido hashtag 4093. Hashtag 4093. So what if I could ask you, so that the team here can test how effective it's going to be with the Wi-Fi available, if you wouldn't mind going on to slido.com and then going into that hashtag 4093, and if I can ask you to answer this question. So how did you arrive at the auditorium here today? Did you walk? Did you take the train? Did you take a taxi? So if you just answer that very simple question, it's not on Slido, I'm just asking you to put your answer in. That way we're going to be able to gauge whether or not the system is going to hold. It's always the case that you never know with these logistical issues until you're here on the day to see if they're going to work properly. Now, as I said, the thematic session for this particular segment is climate change. And in a moment, I'm going to be inviting our 3 people connected with projects to invite me on stage. So just a reminder again, there are 91 Interreg Med funded projects which in one way or another are connected to the following themes: green growth, blue growth, social and creative industries, efficient buildings, renewable energy, urban transport, sustainable tourism, and biodiversity protection. And so now we're going to hear from 3 people who will tell us more about the progress of the Interreg Med projects in these 3 categories. So can I invite on stage now Anna Maria Paladus from the Societal Responsibility Activator Fondazione Ecosistemi in Italy, Cynthia Echave, Project Manager with Urban Ecology Agency of Barcelona, and Maxime Cacciutolo, Project Manager with Euromed Cities Network. Apologies for my bad pronunciation of your names. I mean, it's one of the challenges when I moderate these numerous language conferences is trying to get people's names right. You're all going to pass from one to the other, and you have your microphones. You're comfortable with the systems here? Yeah? There is a second mic. Do you want to take the second mic just in case? Do one of you want to take that? Okay, so over to you.
The floor is ours, yes? Okay. Welcome on behalf of the 8 thematic communities of the Interreg program. My name is Gianmaria Paladus, and I'll have the big challenge to start this presentation on behalf of the 8 communities. Not because I'm the first one, but because I'll be introducing you in one of the most important topics that will affect our region, which is climate change. And we'll start with an overview of this topic to make sure that we all have the same information, because we're speaking a lot of times about climate change and climate change impacts in the Med area, but let's see what will happen more specifically. First of all, we'll have some cross-cutting impacts in the years to come. The Med area is one of placed in the top 25 hotspots concerning climate change by IPCC, by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This will mean that in the years to come, in average by 2100, the temperatures in the region are expected to increase by around 6%. Also, precipitation will suffer from heavy reduction. It's expected that we will have by 201,000 60% less precipitation in the area. Sea acidification will continue, is already going at an unprecedented rate and will continue to be like this, if not even worse. We're already experiencing and will experience much more extreme events, droughts, and very heavy storms. Last but not least, we are already feeling it, but it will be worse. We'll have a sea level increase by around 0.5 meters by 2100 at least. Of course, that these impacts will put great pressures on the natural, but also on the human settlements. First of all, on the natural and managed resource and systems, we will continue to have an extensive soil degradation, desertification. We will have the coastal aquifers that will be affected by the salt intrusion. We will have inland biodiversity and also agriculture that will suffer from the temperature increases and the reduction of the temperatures. We will also have problems, major problems with the fresh water. We heard about it previously, in a zone, in an area which is already water scarce. Also, the human settlements will tremendously suffer, especially in the small islands and the coastal areas, which are one of the most vulnerable in the Mediterranean area. Port infrastructure, railways, roads, energy infrastructure will be highly affected, especially by the heat and also by the extreme events. It's our health that will also have to suffer, and the well-being. Because of the temperature increases and of the other impacts, we will have new type of allergies, new type of diseases due to the increases of the temperatures. But we will also have major problems with the way we are feeding people, because agriculture will be tremendously affected. How did we arrive here, and why we didn't take actions beforehand? Well, we're dealing with a very challenging topic when we're speaking about climate change. First of all, it's a topic that deals with complex thinking, and it has systemic impacts. It's affecting the cultural, the institutional, the economic, the social, the political life. And it's a challenge that humanity didn't have it until now at this rate. It's affecting all of the sectors of the society, and it involves the cooperation among these sectors and among different type of actors. Or it's kind of difficult to have it nowadays in our type of society. It's also very difficultly predictable. Unfortunately for us, nature and climate, they don't work in a linear way. They go in waves, they go in exponential directions sometimes, and it makes very difficult to foresee what will happen in the future. And if you look behind 20 years ago, no one would have said that we will reach this type of numbers and this type of impact nowadays. Last but not least, it's difficult to deal with climate change in the Med area because we're also speaking about climate justice. Mediterranean countries have been the ones that have contributed perhaps the least to the problems that we are now facing. And they are one of the first ones to suffer the greatest impacts of climate change. And among these countries, it will be the most vulnerable groups that will have the most to suffer, and they contributed not too much to this. We know it's a difficult speech to have in the morning, but as a Chinese saying is stating, perhaps in each crisis, and we are living a crisis concerning climate change, we can find and we should find the seeds of opportunity. And we took the courage, we have been bold to imagine how the Med area could look like in 2050, how a positive scenario may look like, and we didn't do it by ourselves. In fact, we were inspired by two major institutional frameworks which are governing the climate change issues in the Med area, and that are putting an accent on 4 pillars, which is research and development, technology, funding, and policies. And if we take them into account, we hope and we would like that in 2050, we will all live in an area that ends all forms of poverty, fights inequalities, and tackles climate change while ensuring that no one is left behind. And this is very in line with the UN 2030 agenda. What will happen in this positive world? Well, from a research and development viewpoint, we will live in an area where we will have a Mediterranean common research agenda in which universities will work together with research bodies and with other type of actors and make common advancements on climate change, in which climate change science will open to policies and will open to education so that everyone is aware of this major challenges that we are living. In this world, technology will have a very important role to play because it will provide us with climate change adaptation and mitigation solutions, smart solutions. This will be made possible because we will have climate change funds, a lot of climate change funds at regional, at national, at local levels, financing all kinds of pilot and experimentation cases, and in which public institutions, they work with the banking and with the insurance sectors. This will be made possible also because we'll have great climate change policies. Climate change will be integrated in the urban, peri-urban, rural, coastal areas. Local authorities would have taken the lead on climate change, aware of the role that they have, and we will have dedicated energy efficiency and renewable energy policies. Last but not least, this positive world that we want to imagine will be made possible because we would have undergone significant social and behavioral shifts. We will live in a world in which, and in an area where we will be more solidal one with another, especially with the most disadvantaged groups, because they will have the more to suffer from what is happening. And we will live in an area in which cooperation, not competition, will be the key value that we will promote. I think it sounds rather positive, rather nice as scenario. And in fact, us as Interreg-Med communities will play a significant role in this positive world. What do you think, Cynthia?
Do you want to take the mic?
Oh, okay. So indeed, what do we need having this understanding the main challenges? What we think is that we have the responsibility to think about our planning and management of our territories in terms of resilience. And this is quite important because it's the way that we can understand our territories as an ecosystems, not only as the natural ones, but as well the human impact. So for that sense, it's a very simple but important way to understand it is that we have the physical structure within conditions, environmental conditions where organisms are living there. And that they create relationships between them and in order to create complexity. And this is important because if we think in natural-based solutions for these territories and those strategies, then we will understand more or less which is the outcomes and the overall approach of our Interreg-Med projects currently on course. So we will try to explain you in a very synthesized way which are these contributions ongoing. So as it was explained before, the architecture, it's composed about modular projects and horizontal projects. So what I am going to explain you in a very synthesized way, it's the approaches from our modular projects. So I thought that it was interesting using as a cross-cutting the territories in order to understand how we impact on those different kinds. So beginning with islands. As you know, most of their vulnerability right now is the resources supply. We have a huge peak demands due to seasonal periods. So most of the projects that are, oh, sorry. Can you skip that? Okay. It's a little bit, okay, so here. So most of the projects, the approach is according to energy supply, so self-sufficiency for islands is highlighted here. So we have projects about PV storage system where the main or the key issue is the optimization of these systems in order to have particular approaches in islands. As well, microgrids and efficient buildings as a way, a different management way of understanding the energy and distributing the uses on housing and different kind of buildings. And of course, the blue energy laboratories. There are more about 20 pilot laboratories that are going to be developed. So in the aim, it's how we can stress this idea of making a more approach of the local renewable energies sharing systems. Then if we talk about the protected marine areas, one of the main important impacts, bioindicators that we have, it's about the mortality of invertebrates. More than 30 species are registered. So the projects that are working in adaptation, there's working on a methodology for a process of adaptation to climate change. And that means it's interesting because it's not only about monitoring, assessment, but as well awareness. So most of the effort that they are working on, it's also to be able to get this information to local authorities, to the maximum stakeholders, so fishermen, diver associations, etc. Then if we go to the coast, we know the most important of the impacts that we have is the urban pressure that we have in this territory. So we have different scopes and approaches. One is the coastline landscape. So there's a project working on how we can introduce design and planning of, in order to control runoff and naturalization strategies. Then by the other side, for the touristic activities, we have these proposals of certification systems for those touristic activities that implement somehow water, energy savings, and waste management. So as it was said before, most of the impact that we have littering in the sea, it's because the pressure that all this coastline generates to the sea. So this is really good because these eco-labels can help that as consumers or tourists can have the option and can be able to choose a more sustainable journey or trip. And in terms of landscape, it's not only about making more currents with the cycle of the water and the impact that we have between the coastline, but as well to increase the and promote the Mediterranean landscape. So then, it is also a few of projects making approaches on touristic mobility, especially on those coastal areas that have cruises. As you know, cruises have a very important impact in the number of people who arrive suddenly to a territory. So in this case, it's really interesting that mobility plans of the SAMs, urban mobility plans, incorporate in their plans an integral idea of also these fluxes, not only the displacements of regular mobility, the people who goes to work, but also this impact. So then we go to the urban areas. Here, as you know, the most important impact is related to a high consumption of energy, water, a linear waste management, and of course, the urban heat island, air pollution and noise. So most of our projects are making, the peri-urban areas, of course, the main impact is about sprawling, territorial fragmentation, and disconnected territories. So as we said, we need to, we have the responsibility to think in this, how we can plan and how we design the revitalization of these areas in order to increase and encourage more sustainable lifestyles. And most of the projects are involved to urban gardening, also to increase in local renewable energy uses, and specifically efficient buildings. Not only in the scale of a building, but as well in the scale of a neighborhood. And in this sense, responsible consumption as being available to the people to access to 0-kilometer products, an ecological agri-food cluster, and as well the mobility. So in the overall sense, it's to promote sustainable lifestyles, and as well including the industry area. So for the peri-urban, most of the approaches focus on increasing the urban productivity and closing the loop. That means that all those industrial manufacturing can be closer to the city or to the urban areas. And having this approach, in particular, to be more accessible for small and medium enterprises in order to introduce in their processes a life cycle analysis and the use of materials and in an efficient way. And of course, a metropolitan agriculture. And this is interesting because, as I said before, a sprawling and territory fragmentation, if we encourage the metropolitan agriculture, the farming and the surroundings, it's working as a border. So this border can help to contain the sprawling somehow. So then finally, we have the rural areas where most of the vulnerability is due to the isolation sometimes and the loss of population. So we have to think about these areas also as an opportunity for revitalize them. So in this sense, we have projects working for rural microgrids, local renewable energy with a lot of approach related to awareness and governance, energy policies, for fiscal proposals for fiscal and taxes related to renewable energies, and for sure resilient farming. Then it's interesting because most of the approach is how to create an added value of Mediterranean products through incorporating the emission assessment of the some Mediterranean products. And in protected forest areas, it's also interesting because we have this project also to promote the biomass forest energy, and that's really interesting how we match the planning, the territorial and the management of the forest in order to have a productive use, and as well the sustainable mountain tourism. So both represent an example of a sustainable uses as a protection strategy. So obviously, a matter of increasing the attractive life in the rural area. So just to summarize, actually all these modular projects that are working through the Med communities, if I may say, we actually are like a whole living lab because it's an authentic and fascinated living lab because we're on constant synergies. And, well, probably would be better to listen in concrete illustration.
Thank you. Okay, I will take that. Yes, I want now just to give you some numbers to illustrate the contribution of our modular projects. And if you remember well, my colleague Anna presented in the beginning of the presentation 4 pillars. Here they are. And I want to show you how our modular projects are fulfilling the objectives behind those pillars. A word on adaptation and mitigation, because these are 2 different things. According to the NASA, basically adaptation is adapting to climate change. You can have this image of the desert with just one little flower. And mitigation is about reducing climate change. So it's 676 contributions to climate change, mitigation and adaptation together by our Interreg-Med projects. Adaptation, what are our activities for adaptation? Pilots, living labs, innovative policies, and innovative technological solutions. And for mitigation, it's about assessment and methodology tools, planning and management tools, governance tools, and innovative policies. Research and development. Pilots and living labs, and assessment and methodologies. What stands behind pilots and living labs? 2 or 3 examples. Oops, sorry. We got regional blue energy labs, green manufacturing pilot plants, or pilot activities for public building refurbishment. Sorry. And behind assessment and methodologies, there are sustainability assessment framework at urban scale, life cycle assessment tools, or methodologies targeted to public building stock owners. Technology now, two things: innovative technology solutions and planning and management tools. Behind innovative technology solutions, we can find some blue economy technologies, microgrids, or green energy refurbishment technologies, and a word on planning and management tools. Actually, we put this chart here, but it could have been, we could have put this, this chart on the next, under the next pillars on funding, actually, because planning and management tools, that's also a lot of technological tools, but that's also about business models, financial capacity, financial guidelines for financial measures. A word on this third pillar on funding, the pilots by community. Why we put this chart here? Because a lot of pilots are implemented by our modular projects, and we need funding because that costs a lot of money implementing those pilots, and also that's why. And you, Anna, mentioned that. The interest of the InterregMed program and these pilots and finding funding, finding financial solutions is to make link with other programs, such as H 2020, for example. And last but not least, policies, the fourth pillar. We got innovative policies and governance tools. You can imagine what is an innovative policy, but a word on governance tool. Just 2 or 3 examples again. It's some best practices catalog, toolboxes for local administration, and capacity building activities for energy managers. Yes, this image, the actors. We got research entities, business companies, and mainly local authorities involved in our projects as partners. In the conclusion of the first part of the presentation, Anna talked about raising awareness and behavioral shifts. If we want to have a real impact on society, if we want to have a real impact on climate change, if we want to reduce climate change, we need to think different, to behave different. And for that, we have to reach civil society, basically the citizens. And so far, it's more than 80,000 people reached on social media. And I would just say a word out of the protocol. Today, we are celebrating the signature of the Treaty of Paris, establishing the first, let's say, European community at the very beginning of the European Union. And I think that it's a wonderful symbol being here together for talking about cooperation in such a day. And thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yep, thank you very much. Okay, thank you so much for your presentations, Anna Maria Paladus, Cynthia Echave, and Maxime Cacciutolo. Very interesting, very good summaries. You stuck to the time, and I have to congratulate you on the creativity of your slides. It's fabulous to see beautifully produced slides. So, lots of issues raised during the outline of what's going on, some of the concerns and also some of the challenges ahead. So we're going to maybe touch on some of these questions now during our Q&A session. And if I can again remind you about Slido, this will be the way to project your questions. So now, can I invite our panelists participating in this debate to join me on stage. Barbara Samari, the Vice President of SVMed, the Euro-Mediterranean Centre for Sustainable Development. Arnau Queralt, the Chair of the European Network of Environment and Sustainable Development Advisory Councils. Gianmaria Sanino from ENIA, Italian National Agency for New Technologies, Energy and Sustainable Economic Development. And then finally, Amir Abdullah, Associate Professor with the University of Queensland in Australia and Senior Advisor at the European Topic Centre for Spatial Analysis and Synthesis. Maybe if the Interreg people managing Slido, if you can let me know whether you think we'll be able to take questions. So whoever is going to be communicating with me, if you can do that so that I know whether or not that we can take people's questions. So if you can let me know, that would be great. Okay, you're all very welcome. You will be sharing microphones. So I'm going to, if you can share that one, and if I can give that one to the two of you to share. So maybe if we can start off with you, Barbara, and I think maybe some of my questions are going to be just really obvious, but as we saw from both the opportunities and the challenges that have just been presented, they are kind of obvious as well. So let's maybe start with a point that Maxime was referring to there about the need to embrace citizens. On climate change, what do you think? What would be your recommendations about, you know, how do you engage citizens at a very local level? How do local authorities, public authorities, reach out to citizens to make sure that they're engaged in this big challenge to tackle climate change?
Okay, thank you. Good morning to everybody. Yes, all the issues, and also talking about this debate, this important debate, I try to think about something to add to contribute to the debate, and actually it's not easy because we know each of us, we know the good practice, we know how we can act. The problem is how involve the actors, and in particular citizens, and the role of local community, that is very important. And finally, I identified few key words and concepts that, in my opinion, can be recommendation. Because normally, if we want to reach this system, this complex system that they came to say about, we have to focalize the needs of consistency, because we need this consistency at a horizontal and vertical level. I mean, local communities that want to ask something to the citizen, first of all, have to act and drive this challenge, this change of behavior, acting first of all them in this direction. And also vertical, because we need consistency between national, regional, and local policies, strategies, and decision makers. The other key question, a key concept, is the continuity. Mainly, we miss this continuity. The decision makers change, and sometimes also the policies, the strategies. In this sense, we need really continuity to reach a concrete impact at the local level. In this sense, where are the citizens? Consistency and continuity give the opportunity to local authorities to be believable, to involve citizens, because citizens can be involved when we believe decision makers, local authorities. Otherwise, they think that is just another activities, another communication activities, another politics just to catch votes.
But how do you reach out to citizens? How do you engage them?
In this case, and the last key word is communication. how, for example, we try to do this in InterAgMed projects about sustainable tourism. We set up a label for certification of tourism facilities, but we create a territorial label. What means territorial? That first of all, the local committee, the local board managing this label has to commit itself to do something. We call these action demonstrative measures to reduce because the label is about the reduction of use of resources like water, energy, and minimization of waste. So first of all, the local authorities connected in this committee, in this board, because we need this kind of consistency, has to act. And after, they ask to the entrepreneurs to do something. So to ask for the certification because they commit to do something to reduce this resource use and the production of waste. The other important thing is communication. How we reach these entrepreneurs and citizens, because we need citizens and tourists in this case be involved. And the step can be entrepreneurs or direct to citizens and tourists. But how we did this? We try to understand the final targets also. I just want to mention a new target that is very important. When we talk about climate change impact for new generation, who are the new generation? There was another question that we discussed before this debate. Is for us or is for the new generation? But who are the new generation? We know the future world of this new generation. Very important, the most important economic newspaper in Italy, the Sole 24 Ore, a few weeks ago published an article about the fact that the 70% of entrepreneurs will boost workers to work in remote, at home. What this means? At the global level, the 50% of workers will be remote workers before the 2050. What it means? The impact at the climate change is wonderful because mobility, dematerialization. But what this means? We have to understand that the future generation, they will live in another system, not in our system.
Okay.
So, for example, in communication, we involve these digital nomads, remote workers, to involve the local community because we need the quadruple helix to impact in the territory for created communication strategy.
Okay, let's tease that out a little bit, and if I can go to you, Arnau, Queralt.
Yes.
Can you maybe give us a picture of what this local connection might be between the local authorities, the entrepreneurs, the people living in their homes, and how do you draw the circle between all of them for better sustainability?
Wow. So I have 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I will try to be brief. I think it's a good topic. I mean, and I think that you should also say that the scientists in this, you need to include scientists in the loop. I mean, climate change is here. Some people say that it's not a change, not only a change, it's a shock. Something, it's huge than only a change, and that we should use the word shock, a climatic shock, just in order to make sure that everyone understands the importance of the transformations we are going to face in the future.
Climatic shock.
Climatic shock, yeah, S-H-O-C-K.
S-H-O-C-K.
Yeah, shock. So the point is, okay, we are facing. If you read the scientific news, newspaper articles, everything, you will find somehow some dramatic transformation in our environment that will affect how we live, how citizens live, how politicians need to manage society, how the business community needs to change everything. So the point is, how do you convince all these people in the loop that they need to act together? First of all, you need to convince politicians that, and it's not an easy task, but that we are paying with public money a lot of scientific projects and cooperation projects with very interesting results that are not used for the design and implementation of policies, plans, and programs. And this is a key point. Scientists are telling us about the impact. Then you need to also to make sure that the media and using media and other tools, citizens and politicians can understand the importance of these results. This means to work on messages, to work on the tools they use to communicate. Then once we have understood all the impacts, then let's talk about this. I mean, it's not a matter of doing a lot of things. I mean, we feel like in a hamster wheel where we work and we develop a lot of projects.
You're saying it over and over again, but aren't we doing that? We are. You know, isn't the message getting out there? Don't people know how serious it is?
I don't know. I think that we learn about when you have a big crisis. Then we had our experience in Barcelona. I worked there, and we have a terrible, very severe drought in 2008. And the situation was so difficult that in a couple of weeks, the reduction of population reduced the level of water consumption beneath the levels recommended by the World Health Organization. But the point is, in 2 weeks, we reduce dramatically our consumption, water consumption, but we fix that consumption. So we never consume what we had consumed before the crisis. So this is, perhaps crises are a dramatic way of learning.
The message gets out when there's a dramatic enough
Unfortunately,
event.
yes. I think that we should.
But we don't have. Well, maybe if I can move to you then, Gianmaria Sanino, we don't have the luxury or the time to have one bad climatic event after another before we really need to start taking action. So what do you think should be happening here in terms of engagement of citizens and implementation of policies?
You're totally right. I mean, we cannot wait for a lot of extreme events before to take something about the climate change. But let me say that, this is the first time in history, at least for the recent history, in which people are feeling the effects of climate change. Of course, through the extreme events, they are more frequent, like heat waves in summer. Here in Rome, we all know very well what does it mean, heat waves, because it's very difficult to live here in Rome during heat waves. So from this point of view, let me say that some part of the climate change is very well known by the people. So extreme events are, aiming to take the people and just to say, okay, we have to act. But there are also other effects of climate change. Let me say, for example, the sea level rise. When you said to people that, okay, the sea level rise is one of the most important effects of climate change, but when you say the numbers and say, okay, the sea level rise is increasing 3 millimeters per year, people say, okay, this is not a dangerous at all. This is not my problem. 3 millimeters is not a problem. And this is a communication problem, because 3 millimeters is the average number for our planet. But locally, you can have also meters. So in this case, we need to communicate better the climate change. So we can do that, for sure, starting from the schools, but also trying to teach the teacher of these kids. And at the ENEA here in Italy, we are trying to do this, just to teach the kids. And this is, just to communicate better the climate change. What about the engagement with the citizens?
at least for the most, let's say, dangerous problem, like the extreme events, the heat waves, flood flash, or whatever. A way to do this is thanks to the digital engagement methods using social media, web platform, in which you ask, I mean, the local authorities can ask to the people for new idea, or how do you see your city in the next future to, I mean, to be safe from heat waves or something like that. I've seen that Interact Med has reached hundreds of, I mean, many 84,000 people. I mean, a lot of people. So, and I know that many cities already did some this kind of engagement. So digital engagement can be a method to engage citizens, at least for the most, I mean, simple climate effects.
And what kind of things should you be saying to the citizens? I mean, you know, because there's a range of things, initiatives that citizens could do, from being more responsible about plastic waste or whatever it is, to maybe engaging in enterprises. So how do you get that complicated message out to them, to bring them in?
I mean, just asking from new idea coming from the citizens. So how do you see the transportation in the next future in your city? So what do you prefer? I mean, just more electric buses or bikes or whatever. So I mean, something that is real, the people that feel every day. So this can be an idea. It just the people feel the problems and try to find by themselves the solution to the problem.
And if you don't engage citizens in that very meaningful way, is there a danger then that the implementation of policies will just fall down because there won't be the support at that very local level?
Personally, I don't think that a top-down approach is the best approach. So in this case, we need to involve citizens from scratch. So this is my opinion, of course.
Okay, and just finally to you, Amir Abdullah. Now I have a range of questions to ask, but just on that particular one about communications with citizens, do you have anything to add to that, views and how you engage them?
Yes, thank you. I guess in this sense, I think about climate change as more of an opportunity rather than a global crisis. And when we talk about impacts of climate change on biodiversity, local impacts are what exacerbate the issue. So you have this rise in sea temperature, you have an increase in ocean acidification, for instance, in marine systems. But what really tips systems over the edge are the local impacts and the local activities of people. And so in this case, and just to segue into the point that you were making, engaging the local communities is key to actually change how things are happening in that site. And by dealing with local impacts, you're actually addressing the global challenge of climate change. And so motivating local actors to manage their systems, their ecosystems, is key to tackling a global challenge like climate change. And the way to do that is by showing them that this is not an impossible task, that in fact enhancing the resilience of local systems, if you enhance the resilience of local systems, you're actually enhancing the resilience of the world.
Okay, Arnau, you wanted to come back on that?
Because I fully agree with the idea of the importance of local changes, local reactions. But the point is, what we perceive is a lack of coherence between the actions adopted in the different levels. I mean, you have plenty of local initiatives, very interesting, with a lot of people engaged in their development. But then suddenly there is a decision or a not decision taken or not taken at the national or subnational level. Yeah, and then I mean, it's quite difficult to. I think it's a challenge in itself how to develop this consistency between the different levels.
Absolutely.
And between different policies and the 2030 agenda approved by is a key topic. I mean, let's break the silos, the existing silos between policies, between at the horizontal and vertical level. And this is a topic that could be discussed for years.
For a long time, yes. Amir,
absolutely. Yes. I think I agree, and I think one of the main challenges of climate change is also somehow linking policies that address climate change with policies that address biodiversity loss, and policies that really need to be coordinated to reach the point of pressure. And I guess in many cases people don't really understand the power that natural systems, for instance, can have in mitigating and adapting to climate change, and that you can use these systems to actually address climate change issues that we all face. And it's a strategy to basically go into the future and maintain the integrity of these systems. To do it at the international level has to be done with the local level. And of course, there has to be consistency in between the two different levels. Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll, yes, Barbara, did you want to add to that?
Yes, no, just because the main message has to be given by same citizen. So we have to transform, the communication has to transform the citizen as ambassador of the message. Is the most effective way to involve other citizens. In communication, also for me in planning, but in communication, bottom-up approach is not working very well. So we have to work with citizens to find ambassadors that will involve. For this reason, creating strong local communities. For example, with the living labs that in Interreg projects are working, are testing, is very important. We need a concrete involvement and an awareness of these people to not so only to act and to change behavior, but also maybe to change decision makers.
Change the decision makers. Okay, very good. As you say, we could talk all day about this, but we have other elements in this debate as well. Again, I don't know, are there Slido? Is there a Slido communication? Who's the Slido person here? Do we have Slido yet? No, okay. So I would encourage you to use Slido if there are specific questions that you would like to ask. Let's move on to agriculture and food, because we know those sectors are incredibly vulnerable when it comes to the impact of climate change in the Mediterranean area. What kind of policies, and oh, we have questions, but we'll get back to them in a moment. So what kind of policies, and well, don't look at that just for the moment. Let me just get the agriculture and food question out of the way, and then I'll go to those questions on Slido. Agriculture and food, what kind of policies should be taken? What should farmers do to counteract the effects of climate change? Who wants to take that question on board first? But, yeah, okay. Gianmaria, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they can work for example, on water. I mean, we know that the Mediterranean Sea is one of the what we call hotspots, climatic hotspots. I mean, there are some hotspots in the planet. That means are areas that are very sensible to the climate change. One is the Arctic, for example, and another one is the Mediterranean Sea, just because it's just in the middle of three climate systems. So it's very sensitive to the climate change. That means if we will be, I mean, in the COP21, let's say, limit, that is 2 degrees, no? In Europe, we will experience, in the Mediterranean area especially, a more higher temperature. I mean, so in this case, we have to be very, how to say, prepared to these changes that in any case we will face in the future. And of course, there will be also more evaporation. So we have to work on water. First of all, just to reuse the water. I mean, they can reuse the water. We can work also on desalinization of the water. They have to be also prepared to change crops according to the climate scenarios, and also to promote and helping in the creation of what we call the climate services. You know that there are climate services that try to give you information tailored for your specific, let's say, field. And in this case, for agriculture, I mean, in Europe, there are many projects that are now trying to set up these climate services to give to the farmer, for example, the information in advance, not only on a climate change, let's say, perspective. I mean, not only in 10, 20, or 30 years, but even for the next season, just to be prepared to the next season. So maybe
and sorry, is that somebody physically going out to talk to the farmer, or?
I mean, it's just setting up a climate service is just a work that is in the middle between scientists and the farmer. So the farmer asks for specific information, climate information, to the researcher, and the researcher just tailor the, let's say, physical information, something that they can use to be prepared to the climate change and also for the seasonal, change, because we know that the climate change is also affecting the seasonal, our season. So this is the way they can get the most valuable information from the academic and from the research.
And you mentioned that farmers need to be ready to change their crops. Are you saying to actually grow crops that they may not have grown before and therefore not developed a market for them to date?
Yeah, I mean, this is, if you know that your region will be affected, even in the good, let's say, climate scenario, to be, affected by drought. So maybe you must be ready to change crops, to be, resilient to this kind of change. So there are these both, let's say, time window. Short time window, there is the seasonal, let's say, change that you can experience in the next 3 months, and then so you can help the development of these climate services. And on the other side, try to have a look to the, let's say, longer window time. So if you know that on longer time something is changing on your region, so try to be prepared.
To look ahead and be more dynamic. I know, Arnau, you wanted to come in, Barbara too. Amir, Abdullah, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, it's not really my sector, but I guess in terms of food security, and I see also another way of somehow guaranteeing or working to maintain food security going into the future, and that's the idea of keeping some of the systems around where people live intact, that they maintain ecosystem services, and one of these services is obviously provision of food. One particular example, for instance, in the Mediterranean Sea is fisheries, where fisheries have been shown to be enhanced if you keep certain parts of the fishery aside that can replenish and produce spillover that then obviously enhances the populations and the fish stocks outside of these areas. And so maybe also I like this idea of let's think differently and behave differently. We need to find different ways and maybe these natural solutions of addressing and trying to maintain food security going to the future.
Arnau, and then back to Barbara.
I think that the good news is that the Mediterranean area, I think that we are champions in terms of adaptation to climate change. During our history, our common history, we have been champions in terms of adapting agriculture to climate change. So we use, in Catalonia, in Spain, we are using some traditional methods for irrigation that comes from the Roman Empire. And we in the Mediterranean, we have always been in the top rank of areas adapting to difficult climatic conditions affecting our agriculture. We have, let me say that we have also, not it's only climate change the problem, we have also other problems to food, related to food, as for instance, a new problem which is called Xylella fastidiosa. It's like the microorganisms that affects the Mediterranean fruit trees. and we will see what happens. It's not only climate change, but we have a problem there. But the point is, I think that we need to talk with farmers, okay? But then we need also to change, to move from, and this is what we have recommended to different governments, that we need to move from an agriculture policy to a food policy, putting the real value of food on the top of the priorities of the government, because this means to work with the policymakers in charge of land use planning and urban planning, for instance. I mean, if you have, we are talking about the 0 kilometer food production, but then we are using the most fertile agricultural areas to build industries, to build new urban areas, etc.
So we're using the good land, you're saying?
Yeah,
which is a stupid thing to be doing,
the most
to be
precious
putting
land,
an urban development
the most
into
precious
fertile
land in terms of food production have been occupied by new urban areas during last time. And this is a key issue for when we talk about food resilience. And this means that we need to introduce food and climate change in the different policies. And our proposal is to design an umbrella food strategy and putting it on the top of the priorities of the government. And then when you have this food policy strategy, then you can tackle the different issues, including climate change, in a more wise and efficient way. Because if not, I mean, it's important to talk with farmers, and we need to do this, and we need to also to make this transfer from from research center to the farmers. But we need someone on the top saying, okay, let's do this.
Okay, Barbara, do you want to add to that?
Yes, just also, again, I think we have to talk about farmers, but thinking about the old farmers, I mean the existing old generation, but also the new one. There was a very interesting survey about that in Italy, for example, there are many young people unemployed that invest in agriculture, in new techniques. It's a very interesting fact because, for example, I'm coming from Sicily, from an area that is very addressed to agriculture, one of the most important in Italy. And the investment in new infrastructure or new technologies or knowledge from addressing to young generation for investing in this sector is very important. And the challenge are make shorter the chain, because we create a lot of food waste in general, but food waste not only after the consumption, but during the delivery. So we have to make shorter as possible the chain, so came back and the people-to-people approach, and also try to reduce the surplus. And we can reach this with these people-to-people approach. The challenge is how the local authorities can support this change. That is not easy, and so some studies about politics, also at the local level, is very important. For example, starting by the food used by canteen, scholarship or public canteen. That is very important. Who supplied food to this canteen? It can be a pilot to understand if we can shorten the chain and also improve the quality of food.
And when you're engaging in the producers of food, the farmers all the way along, don't you have to do it in such a way as well that you're not imposing yet another layer of red tape or more rules and regulations on them? Because, of course, farmers already feel overburdened with all the rules and regs and the red tape that's coming from the EU.
Yeah, it's not an easy word, the administrative level, and I think the main problem is economic for farmers' agriculture, because the chain is so long that tomato, you pay few cents and you will buy in the supermarket €2. We know very well, we came from a very agricultural sector, so we know very well this problem. so shorter the chain, came back also to valorize farmers. That means in this moment, nobody think about farmers. Think about the, in the supermarket, the people is selling the tomato. No, the tomato came from a land and there is a man, a woman is working that. So we have to come back to this to valorize also. The administrative issues are very important that when we will simplify everything. It's always late, too late. But the economic aspect in this moment is the most important challenge in this sector.
Okay, in a moment I want to get on to energy and renewable energies. Before then, can we have those Slido questions just to get a sense of what questions you'd like to ask to make sure that we're getting them covered here? So can you give us that slide? The slide with the Slido questions, because I can't. Do you remember any of the questions that were on there? Yes, to the microphone. Can we get that Slido question? Oh, here we have it. Great. Oh, it's too cold in the room. Yes, I was handed a note. Apparently, why shall we waste so much energy for air conditioning? I have a note to say that apparently they are lowering. No, they're raising. What would they be doing? Are they raising or lowering it? Anyway, they're trying to make it more comfortable for you. So we're trying to tackle that. Are strict protection regulations a solution to tackle climate change? Could new generation use collective intelligence? Okay. What about misinformation about climate change? There, on the web, we have a lot of fake news about the non-existence of climate change. Another person has said citizen engagement is important, but high-level politicians' commitment is crucial to act for reducing climate change impacts. What are we waiting for? Would any of you like to answer any one of those questions in particular? Yes. Amir, if you pick the mic. Yes, if you take the mic.
So I think our strict protection regulations, a solution to tackle climate change, perhaps addresses something that I could speak about. And I guess this has to do with protection of biodiversity, as far as I can understand. I guess I'm not a big fan of the word protected area in the sense that it's a little bit misleading. Protected areas are usually suggested or proposed as a mitigation and adaptation tool to climate change, and they're rightly so. But within this phrase of protected areas, there are a range of tools of management, of which one of them is strict protection. And then there are different levels of managing biodiversity and access to the resources. So that being out of the way, the idea of a protected area or a marine protected area as a tool or a strategy for climate change mitigation and adaptation is an excellent one, because many people in the room would probably know these facts, but maybe just as a reminder, there's a big role that natural systems play in this idea of mitigating, so storing carbon in vegetation or in soil, seagrasses, forests, etc. They keep a tremendous amount of carbon stored in their composition. And so protected areas or marine protected areas in that instant keep or protect that storage from going back into the atmosphere. They also sequester, so they capture more carbon from the atmosphere. As we are emitting carbon, we are sequestering carbon back in these natural systems, and protected areas serve to maintain the integrity or the cohesion of these systems. And of course, there's an adaptation role that natural systems, and by definition, protected areas as a vehicle to maintaining natural systems play. And this is the idea of adaptation. So not only are we protecting species, but we're also maintaining the ecosystem services that will help people cope with the changes that are going to happen to water supplies, I guess food provision, precipitation, drought, fisheries, a whole bunch of ecosystem services that will be impacted by climate change. And by keeping these systems intact, you're also trying to maintain or reduce the change in these ecosystem service provisions. And I guess the last thing I could think about now is this idea of maintaining ecosystem integrity actually addresses a lot of the issues that we talked about here in terms of buffering local climate, reducing the risks and the impacts of these extreme events that we talked about, drought, storms. So my answer to that question is absolutely yes. It's a strategy that nations and the world should definitely adopt and adopt more. There are many challenges to that. So at the moment, we are far beneath the target that was set globally by the CBD, by the SDG discussions of 10% of the world protected or represented by marine protected areas or protected areas. And so that challenge is largely due to two things. Funding, so there's an underfunding in maintaining natural systems at a quality that will allow mitigation adaptation. And that funding is perhaps 30% of what it should be.
Okay.
So it's less than 50%. And then, of course, the policy crisis that we spoke about. And it's this idea that we have two parallel policies in the world now to address climate change as a crisis and to address biodiversity loss as a crisis. And somehow these policies need to align better, coordinate better, and of course link at many different points.
Okay, and I know all three of you, I think, want to comment.
I can try to give just a contribution to the last question, because, yeah, the political committee, for sure it's important, but, for example, if in Italy we analyzed, I just read important survey about the programs of the parties in the last election a few months ago. The last election, nobody talked about climate change, so 5 years ago. In this election, just few parties, not the most important, go in depth of these issues. So when I was saying before, like a provocation, maybe we have to change decision makers, and so policies is also for this reason. The main important issue in this election was migration, migrants, without connecting these issues to climate change.
Yeah.
So there is a limitation in our culture, maybe. It's for this reason, I think that we have to think in a behavior change, in a cultural change, in a medium-long term terms, thinking to addressing our attention to new generation, understanding them, involving them in communication, in planning, and in acting, because it's too easy to commit itself. It's more important act, and we miss this proactivity from politicians, from citizens, from entrepreneurs in this moment. Don't want to be generalized. There are very good practice and very good local authorities planning and acting. But in general, in this moment, we need numbers also.
Okay, Arnau and Gianmaria, did you want to comment as well?
Just the first questions, that was not stupid at all. The first questions about how cold is this room now. Because, I mean, this is a typical easy way to tackle the climate change. I mean, just tuning the air condition at home or in the public building. I still remember when I was in Boston many years ago, and you know, Boston is one of the American cities that are most similar to an EU city. And I was just watching the movie by Al Gore about the climate change. And all the people said, okay, that's true. We are doing very bad in US about climate change. And no one complained about the temperature in the cinema that was 15 degrees less than the outside temperature. So, I mean, this is something that we can do in an easy way and something practical. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, and Arnau, back to the plastic bottles. I mean, absolutely. I have chaired many EU conferences on plastic and what it's doing to our environment, and yet we will all have plastic cups and plastic bottles, and the hotels where we stay in are full of stuff in plastic containers, and yet, you know, it takes a long time for the message to go through. But I don't want to digress into that. Your comments just on what we've been saying there.
I think that it's a matter of when we talk, those that work on sustainable development or environmental issues, we are also resilient, and we know that the rhythms, the speed of political changes is low. It's not so fast as in other topics. For instance, we have urgent challenges on the table, but we based our main decisions on voluntary approaches, long-term perspectives, etc. When there is an economic crisis in the world, the economic institutions and the national governments take immediate decisions, and they can change the situation in 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month.
If the political will is there.
Yeah, because this is important.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
This means that we don't understand the idea of sustainable development, that it's something that integrates environment, the economic, and society. And it's a matter of urgency. Okay, we can talk about voluntary approaches. The case, we have an example with plastic bags. But in France, they are forbidden. You cannot buy a plastic bag. And shops are not allowed to buy in other countries in Europe. You know that you should go with your bag from home, but just in case, you can buy them with a very cheap price.
Okay. Can we maybe refresh the Slido questions so we get a sense again of new questions? You can continue to put your questions through, make your comments, go on to slido.com and use the system there. Let's move on to energy, the supply and management of energy. Maybe if I can go to you, Gianmaria Sanino. What can be done to develop energy models that are based much more on local renewable energies, on self-sustaining energy models?
So actually, now we have the technologies to have this kind of, let's say, local energy producer. So this is not a problem of technology, because you can go on the website and just buy your, let's say, solar panel. So this is not the difficult, let's say, points. What is difficult is just to integrate your local energy in the, general grid, electric grid. So to do that, we have to work on the storage system. So we need much more smart storage technology, and also a smart grid that, electric smart grid that can interact with these, let's say, local producers. Also because you know that renewable energy means something that is difficult to, not to predict, but maybe you will have not a constant level of energy. So you produce a lot of energy during the day because of the sun, or during storms because you have a lot of wind energy. But let me say that in any case, local renewable energies, you can do that in some areas, in the rural areas, or even in the city, but not in the city center. For example, here in Rome, we cannot install nothing on the roof of our building. So in any case, we need also to work on renewable energy in general, because you know that most of the CO2 that we are emitting in the atmosphere comes from the way we produce energy. The 46% of CO2 are just coming from these fields, from the way we produce energy. So we have to increase the amount of energy that comes from renewables. And let me say that we are in the Mediterranean, so we have a lot of, let's say, water, the sea. So why don't explore also the ocean energy in the Mediterranean Sea? I've seen that there are some projects here that are also dealing with the blue energy. And this is, I mean, something that we have to explore more in our seas.
But there are renewable energy projects around.
There are
based on
projects,
the sea,
but
the oceans.
so far there is no power plant that are just selling the energy coming from the sea. So there are.
But it's a cost issue, isn't it? Isn't that part of a problem and an infrastructural challenge as well?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a problem that there's no convergence on the technology. So we don't know what is the best technology to, for example, harvest energy from the wave. But there are projects that are just dealing with this kind of problems. So in a place like the Mediterranean Sea, maybe looking also to the energy coming from tides in the Strait of Gibraltar or in the Strait of Messina or even in the Dardanelles Straits, for example. We can get energy from tides, for example, but also from the waves. So why don't explore also this new kind of renewable energy? And I've seen that some projects are dealing with this new energy, so this is good for Interreg and for the Mediterranean community.
Okay, we have some more questions here. Very good. Now, meat production is one of the most important contributors to climate change. How do we tackle such a challenge? Do you think that responsible tourism should evolve in the Mediterranean over the next years? And in this case, which policy measures are taken? Let's maybe, because there's some very good questions here, let's take the very first one, meat production. Of course, when people might advocate for people to go vegetarian or vegan, there's outrage from the farming communities. I know that myself in Ireland, where our beef production is strong, but you know, if you start talking about becoming more, eating less meat and more vegetables, you nearly get, you know, crucified. So how do you tackle that? Barbara.
It's complicated. We have to change culture. And for example, the last politics that introduced the permission to eat insetti, I don't know how to say, mosquito, is in this sense. I mean, in the future is reduce the use of meat. The problem is that convince people. Maybe in this case, we have just to touch the best, because it's quite impossible to convince people to eat less meat. Or also, if, for example, we organize since 15 years each year the World Water Day, and one it was about this in particular, but. Yes, you show numbers, everybody are there, hey, but after change daily the life, change in the moment of you are buying, you are deciding what I'm eating today. Is this one the challenge? It's not just, and so this is a big challenge. And for this reason, some good example, good practice can be work with the supermarket, work with the industry. But in this sense, also politics have two things. We are saying that we want cut employment to the people that say meat or not. We have to think everything in change. We have to change, and this is resilience culture is not so quick effect, in my opinion. But we have to continue in this sense.
And is that statement absolutely correct, that meat production is one of the most important contributors to climate change? It's not the production of the meat itself, it's having the animals, obviously. Is that, with that, is that a given, that is the case, and therefore it's very obvious one of the challenges to tackle? Arnau, do you want to?
Well, this, I love meat from a personal point of view. But the point is, it's not only climate change. I mean, I think the deforestation of in South America, one of the main reasons, main causes of deforestation is all the meat. It's for breeding the cows that the Western world and now the new medium class in China and China especially. These people, it's meat. Yeah, no problem. In this case, I think, and in some countries, The point is that the agri-food industry is mainly based on meat. I mean, in some countries in the south of Europe, if you make some considerations regarding the reduction of meat, you have a crisis. The Minister for Agriculture has a direct and immediate crisis in less than 5 minutes, because it's the basis of the agricultural policy. But it's an issue. I would like to know if a big hamburger company, we have many in the world, and if some of these companies decide that instead of offering meat hamburgers, they change to another to vegetable veggie hamburger, what would happen? Sometimes these small changes provoke big transformations, but coming back going to the end, it's a problem.
Okay. Now, very good question on tourism. Do you think that responsible tourism should evolve in the Med over the next years? And in this case, what policy measures should be taken? Who'd like to answer that? Gianmaria? It's not your field. Is it anybody's field? Barbara,
no,
okay.
Sorry, I'm Raspberry again, but tourism, we have this project about sustainable tourism, but yeah, in the field of tourism is very complicated because the target, you are many targets. You are the entrepreneurs and you are the tourists. So this field is growing up very quickly. So there are many and more tourism and that we call travelers. This can be a difference. Tourist is somebody that arrive and just exploit a territory. We prefer try to change this culture and try to host travelers, means people that came and merged with the local community and they respect and they help local community grow up. And in this sense, we set up all the communication strategy, all the local communities has to be conscious about this little difference, but that in numbers can be difference. And also in this sense, regional authorities, local communities, local authorities and national authorities have to try to give more information to entrepreneurs, support entrepreneurs, understanding that the future, but at market level, not only because we need, but at market level, the future is addressing, driving entrepreneurs in this sense. So support the entrepreneurs in the tourism industry that want to invest in sustainable tourism.
Okay, can we just take maybe one more Slido question? So if we can have the range of them again, if you can get those up. We'll take one last one, if we can get that slide up. Now, which one would you, what about you, Amir? Is there any question in particular that might be relevant? Shouldn't the new programs be linked, I presume, with the Paris Agreement, try to reach the goals? The mic, actually. Which one? Have we got a microphone? Yes.
I think Joachim has asked two interesting questions. One about citizen science initiatives, and the other one is on marine protected areas and enforcement and implementation.
So those
are these ranked in terms of priority, in terms
I'm not
of number
so
of people who are interested?
I'm not so sure what system is being used.
So the last one is very particular to marine protected areas, but maybe the third one is more general and other people can speak towards it.
So let's look at the last one. A major and urgent challenge for marine protected areas is having real enforcement and implementation of management plans. How do you address this?
So this is an astute question by Joachim, and I guess he's been in the business enough to understand that it's not enough to design and establish a marine protected area or a protected area without actually enforcing it and developing a management plan that works. It's basically like drawing a line on paper and saying, here you go, solution. And this goes towards local action, goes towards local implementation. And again, the key here is a number of different levels of commitment. And I think that we spoke about a number of different ways we can get that commitment and consistency. But it needs to happen, of course, at the level of the policymaker, and I guess mobilizing the funds, but also on a government and a state government and a local manager's level. And what's happening in the world at the moment is that we have this disconnection between where we should be heading towards maintaining natural systems and where we are now, and growth of management of marine systems or systems in general, ecosystems in general, and how they're protected is lagging behind quite a bit. Now, there are a number of reasons why that is, and management enforcement is one of them. But giving people the right tools to actually manage and enforce is an easy solution, and it's not quite expensive. It's not expensive, and it's often not available for a lot of people to just have the tools to manage their systems better. Again, this is a broad topic, but I suspect that it's maybe a facile way of answering a very big question. But again, the commitment needs to come at a higher level in terms of the funding and the policy structure to enable more investment in marine protected areas, to enable more enforcement and management.
Okay, one quick question to maybe one or two of you. What can we realistically do to wean ourselves off fossil fuels as soon as possible? Perhaps to you, Gianmaria.
Could you, sorry, fossil fuel?
What can we do to wean ourselves off, to get ourselves off fossil fuels as soon as possible? There's a really easy question for you.
Yeah, I mean, let me just say what, for example, we are doing here in Rome, for example. So now there's a deadline, but not only in Rome, but in different cities in Europe for the use of diesel cars in the city center. So now there's a deadline. After, if I'm not wrong, 2025, no? In the next very few years, diesel car cannot more allow it to go to the city center, to Rome. So, okay, this is a drastic, let's say, law, but maybe this can help to get out the diesel car in the next, let's say, 10 years. So there are something that we can do, and to say that most of the people are in favor of this kind of law in Rome.
But it is not because of energy, the transition to more sustainable cars. It's because of health. I mean,
health reasons.
Yeah, but in this case, health reasons contributed to change the vision we had. I mean, and this is important. The point is, for instance, for me, what is inspiring is the disinvestment movement. I mean, a lot of private funds, pension funds that decide, and also the World Bank decide to move from investments in fossil fuels to investments, massive investments in efficiency and renewables. And this is a point. It's a very clear message, and you need to combine this very clear message coming from the top with these local initiatives trying to boost autoconsumption of energy.
Okay, and Barbara, did you want to?
No, just
add
to connect also these politics, for example, will be read by citizens like a limitation. I can do something now. If we come back to my provocation before, that is a reality, a perspective that in a few years more and more people will work in remote. You have the same impact. And in this case, it's not a limitation for people, but an improvement of life, quality life, because they will improve their quality life. They won't reach this. And so if the politics will try to understand the future society and help to realize this, addressing in the opportunities for citizens and not in limitation, many times they can have the same impact. For this reason, I was telling before about the fact to try to understand the new world and try to work thinking to the new world and not just actually and try to give a lot of limitation to to limit the damage.
Yeah.
Try to think about the new world, and it's something interesting, and many younger people, the new generation, are trying to tell something about. In this moment, maybe they are not listening.
I totally agree with you. It's much more better to give to the people much more freedom than limitation, for sure. But I mean, maybe we can work on both sides at the moment. I mean, because I mean, we don't have much, I mean, time to tackle the climate change. So if we, I mean, start from limitation and also more freedom is even better.
Yeah, but the problem is that in this moment it's not both.
Yeah, I know, it's only limitation.
I'm not saying that we have not talking about. The problem is that in this moment we are not try to make a difference also understanding the new exigency, and maybe the new generation already have inside in their style, in their lifestyle, some solution. We are not taking into account this. It, in my opinion, is a limitation of the actual policies.
Okay, and there was a good point made by somebody earlier about collective intelligence of the new generation as well. On that point, we will leave it, but thank you very much to Barbara Sarnari, to Arnau Queralt, to Gianmaria Sanino, forgive me if I haven't got all the pronunciations right, and Amir Abdullah. Thank you very much. You can just stay where you are, actually, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for staying with us, and we're almost bang on time, having started quite late. We're only 5 minutes behind schedule. So now it's time for lunch. And if you can come back in here for 2 p.m. sharp, and let me just explain, to get to the lunch area, which is also where the exhibition space is, I think you have to go out that way, but people will be showing you anyway. And please visit the exhibitions as well. That will be in the same, it's in the tent as far as I know, so that's where your exhibitions will be as well. And if you want to watch the project videos, they're back up that direction in the Pedro Arupe room. Enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you back here at 2 p.m. Thank you.